up once again for Game 3 of this CCS Finals. This time, Collective Effort taking on the blue side with Lost Chapter moving over onto the red side. Looks like both teams taking a pretty defensive formation to start us out here. And when we were in a little bit of a break, I was just thinking a little bit more about Lost Chapter's team composition. And I just wanted to point out the sheer pick potential coming out from this Lost Chapter side. Not only do they have Deprapine once again on the Ashe, who displayed a great ability to snipe people out with that enchanted crystal arrow, getting the snipe on Flan, but they also have the Zoe, and when you're able to hit one of those two skill shots, you automatically get the other one. But with Lost Chapter trying to go for a little bit of an invade here, they are going to be spotted out by a nice ward from Collective Effort.
Yeah, the ward is going to spot them out, unfortunately, stopping them in the tracks. That does give the opening over to Collective Effort if they want to try and push in through that top side of the river. See if they can make an invade on the top side happen. At least they would see Gregorio for information, but they aren't going to do that, unfortunately. And in both junglers going to start on their top side here. Gregorio starting leashless. Drip Irrigation getting a little bit of a leash from me, Crit You now. And they're both going to play towards this bottom side, trying to get Flan and Deprapine ahead. So we'll see which one of them actually makes it there first. Sinjao is such a strong jungler right now, so I'd imagine that we'll see a lot more coming out early from Drip Irrigation. But Gregorio, Olaf is a very strong early game duelist as well, so if he can find Drip Irrigation before he hits that bottom side, should be able to pressure him out.
Yeah, and I've always felt like Olaf is this champion that no matter where the meta is, Olaf is as strong as the player that happens to be piloting him. As an example, we see Closer in the LCS as a player who just makes this champion look so incredibly good. So Gregorio, I mean, I'm sure that at some point in the CCS season, we've seen him on the Olaf. I don't believe that he's played the Olaf on the stream in particular. So I'm excited to see what he can do with this champion that is really able to take a hold of the game and really just run it from there. If you can get an early lead, obviously, as you mentioned, Naka, Drip Irrigation, also with the Xin Zhao and a very strong jungler as well. Both of these champions are particularly extremely strong at early game ganking, so I wouldn't be surprised if we do see some kind of fight break out over something like the Scuttle Crab. Looks like Gregorio is going to have a little bit of an advantage in his early clear, as Olaf tends to do, but until we see these junglers get over to the Scuttle Crab, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Collective Effort's team composition. With so much of the damage centered on the Jinx as well as Filiberto on the Victor, if Lost Chapter does find a fight where they're able to zero out Flan and Filiberto early, the damage is really going to end up being lacking from Collective Effort. So there is kind of that clear win condition for this Lost Chapter squad. There's going to be a huge red X target on the back of Flan and Filiberto, and it's going to be up to the rest of Collective Effort to keep their carries alive.
Yeah, and look how fast Gregorio's clear was. He did a full clear into the scuttle before Drip Irrigation could even finish his second buff. And unfortunately, that's going to cost him. Drip Irrigation losing that red buff order to Gregorio in favor of ganking on the top side. He's going to get the taunt onto Kevin Chen. Flashes underneath the turret, but now is tanking minions as well as the turret. Minion blocking him from getting out of that one, but he does manage to get out before the final turret shot comes through. But that is flash down for both Kevin Chen and Drip Irrigation. And Kevin Chen is probably gonna have to teleport here.
Yeah, and so that will be a little bit of an early advantage in the top lane for Collective Effort, but I will say this, I'm really not a big fan of junglers immediately flash following when they do find that early gank into the top lane and get the flash out of the opposing enemy top laner, because had Drip Irrigation just held on to his, it's just a straight win, as Trouble Bubble is going to land onto Filiberto, but not able to trade that much more damage back by Shin Yuna. But so that was just a little bit of a sloppy flash forward from Drip Irrigation. There was a little bit of issue, it looked like, with the minions perhaps stopping him in his tracks. So Drip Irrigation just good gank still. I would like to see him follow it back up to Kevin Chen, but it's so much of a more powerful follow-up gank from the Xin Zhao if you save that flash and have it available for a follow-up. And now Dragon spawning early here, and this is something that the Olaf does really, really well, clearing this early Dragon by himself. Obviously, we know that Olaf, he gains attack speed as he loses health, so not going to be a problem for him to get that one, to zero that one out. And just another early Dragon advantage it looks like it's going to be from Lost Chapter, and this was a huge point of power for them in Game 2.
Yeah, now with that first Dragon, I mean, Olaf is generally the one that's going to get that, so not too surprised there, but that does give him a little bit of pressure and tempo in the early game here. Gregorio looking to go in onto Flan, but here comes Drip Irrigation on the backside to counter the gank, and with the teleport coming in from Meet Crit now, it's a numbers advantage for the side of Collective Effort. W does land onto Yauma, and Drip Irrigation goes in. Flash coming out from Flan to pick up that first blood. Not sure if that was necessary since the Wind Becomes Lightning did land from Drip Irrigation, but that does give the kill over to Jinx. That's a lot of gold accelerating that AD carry early here for the side of Collective Effort.
Yeah, and obviously the Flan is the person that you would most want to get that kill, but as you already mentioned, I don't think it's really worth it to expend the flash from the Jinx to pick that one up, especially when you're playing something like an Olaf that should be able to really come back down and take advantage of it with a full 5 minutes to do so. Me Crit You now also expending his teleport, so he's not going to have that one available. He did have that advantage over Kevin Chen, but it doesn't ultimately end up making that much of a difference in the kill. So nice first blood for Collective Effort, but then when we look at the gold charts, it still is a 400 gold lead here in the early game, almost a 600 gold lead now for Lost Chapter, despite giving over that first kill. So something that you might be a little bit surprised to see. And again, I would just really like to see Gregorio punish that decision. It almost looked like there might have been some communication between the Collective Effort team, maybe Flan saying, hey, I've got my flash, I'm going to go forward and pick this one up, because you mentioned Naka, I really think that Drip Irrigation did have that one if he did want it.
Oh, good chunk onto Filiberto here. And Lost Chapter actually has a lot of priority in these solo lanes at this point. Xin Yuna has a sizable lead over Filiberto, but looking at the top side, Kevin Chen's supposed to pick up a huge wave. Is going to be about 2.5 waves up over Me Crit You now. And it seems like after game 1, Kevin Chen has really stepped up in this top lane.
He certainly has, and I really like him being on this Mundo pick as Deprapine, or rather Drip.
Kevin Chen gets engaged onto by Drip Irrigation and Me Crit You now. The Crescent Guard is going to come out from Xin Zhao, but nothing else comes out of that, and we're seeing it again. Drip Irrigation just forcing a little bit too hard, despite Kevin Chen already being under the safety of his turret.
Yeah, and just using his ultimate just in the nick of time there for Kevin Chen, able to drop the maximum dosage to keep himself healthy and keep himself alive. And so a little bit more time wasted, honestly, from Drip Irrigation. Kevin Chen, he didn't even have a flash to expend in that circumstance, so doesn't do it. And I wanted, really the biggest lead for me, and it's been consistent throughout this series, is here in the bot lane. Now it's only about a 200 gold lead right now for Deprapine, on top of Flan, but keep in mind that Flan picked up that first gold blood, but now with Drip Irrigation down into the bot lane, he might be looking for a gank.
Yeah, Drip Irrigation going in, flashes in onto Deprapine, forced the flash out of Deprapine, and Yauma is caught out here, doesn't have the flash, uses the ignite, the exhaust, but does get picked up by the Super Mega Death Rocket, and that's gonna be another kill over to Flan.
Yeah, so a nice gank, and I specifically want to call out Cidermill with a beautiful Equinox there, able to get the root down onto Yoma, which ultimately did secure them the kill. And with another Sleepy Trouble Bubble landing in the mid lane, Xin Yuna once again with a really impressive performance here.
Kevin Chen looking to dive Me Crit You now? And lands another cleaver. Me Crit You now so low, he's going to have to back off this turret. And Kevin Chen's just taking full control of this top side, already 2 plates in.
And that's just the power of this Mundo pick. Even though he was ganked early. He did then drop down. He got ganked 2 times, actually. Blew his flash early on, but he's still just in complete control of this lane. And even though Shen will continue to get tanky, and eventually will be very difficult for the Mundo to take down, the Mundo is going to be even tankier. And with the CS lead that is developing here, as Shin Yuna taking Filiberto dangerously low, I am impressed with this early game lead that has been able to be developed in the top lane. I think that Kevin Chen is certainly showing us the player that he is, as the Enchanted Crystal Arrow also just going wide onto Philly B. But second dragon has spawned. It's going to go over to Lost Chapter again.
Yeah, Lost Chapter with 2 dragons up. Despite the 2 kills that went over to Flan, and no kills being picked up yet by the side of Lost Chapter, they have such a huge lead. Look at all the lanes. There's even a little bit of a CS lead coming on the mid lane, barely so, but all the other lanes are like 20 to 30 CS up on their laners. Even more so even for top lane. Drip Irrigation, though, does spot Gregorio, and Yama is trying to get out. Does have a stand side coming up from Me Crit You now. Forces the flash out of Gregorio to keep himself alive away from that. But Filiberto on the backside, chasing him down. Can't manage to kill Gregorio. Finally does, but it might be a little bit too late as the rest of the team's coming in now. Kevin Chen is just such a raid boss, but does end up falling on the backside. And that's another 2 kills over to the side of Collective Effort.
Yeah, Collective Effort coming up positive in that team fight, even though it is Lost Chapter going deep into the jungle of the opposing team to try to make it happen. And, you know, just a really big fight for here in the early game. Gregorio definitely making a lot happen. He has this ability to continue to survive through these early game skirmishes. Honestly, pretty remarkable. We expected him to drop Must earlier in that team fight. Finally, Filiberto, he does end up dropping his flash on the Victor to go forward and pick that one up. And that is going to be important for the Victor to pick up these early kills. You talked about it, Naka, in game 1 with his passive, how that does benefit him. Eventually, he is going to be able to clear out these waves a lot quicker, just one-shotting these minions, which means that Shin Yuna, won't have as much opportunity to successfully lane against him, because as it is right now, the Zoe has been just kind of a terror, to be honest, for this Victor. Philly B has managed to still stay even in CS, but he's definitely had a little bit of trouble. So interesting fight early on, but I do want to point out at the end of it all, Flan now sitting at 3-0-1 on this Jinx, and CS or no CS, he is eventually going to be able to pick up so many items that he will be so strong, much stronger than the Ashe ultimately in these later game team fights. He already has been able to pick up his Mythic.
Oh, Drip Irrigation trying to look to go on to Kevin Chen. The ultimate comes out early, but is the heal going to be enough? Kevin Chen playing so brave here as he knows the ultimate is healing up even more. And Drip Irrigation is pushing so much pressure into this top lane, but it's not really doing much. Honestly, you brought it up earlier. I feel like he's really wasting a lot of time here.
Yeah, he is. And at this point in the game, if I'm Drip Irrigation, I really wouldn't be spending time, as Gregorio does want to fight for this scuttle.
And Me Crit You now is just going to have to back up off of it. Filiberto coming in from the bottom side. But Shin Yuna is here as well to support. There's the Sleepy Bubble Trouble. Gonna land onto Me Crit You now. Gregorio picks up that kill. Filiberto sidesteps the axe, but that's another kill going over to the side of to the side of Lost Chapter here. And they have a gold lead based off of their CS leads alone, but they're also clawing back their way in through these kills.
Yeah, and just a nice pick. If you know, Me Crit You now just being a little bit too aggressive there, trying to go into that jungle, maybe trying to pick up some vision, as he knew that Gregorio would most likely show up to try to get that scuttle crab. But once the Olaf hits you with one of those axes, he will just continue to chase you down again and again. And I think it also displayed how when you are able to get a slow to start off, kind of the engagement, whether it's Gregorio on the Olaf, whether it's Kevin Chen throwing the cleavers with the Mundo, it allows Shin Yuna to be able to hit those sleepy trouble bubbles so much easier when you're with these targets that are really slowed down. It makes it so much less of a skill shot to be able to land that one, so is able to get it down onto Me Crit You Now, and with Me Crit You Now going down one more time, it just continues to extend the gold lead for Kevin Chen. He does have almost a 50 CS lead. He is at a 50 CS lead so far in this top lane, and Mundo is an interesting tank champion as well, Daka, because he scales in a way that to me a lot of other tanks don't, in terms of the amount of damage that he's able to dish out all throughout the game. There will reach a certain point at which Kevin Chen will be virtually unkillable despite the amount of damage that will come from the Victor and the Jinx, and Mundo is just going to be so annoying to deal with if you're Filiberto or Flan, just running up into their face. You already mentioned how he was kind of playing that raid boss role in the earlier fight. He's going to be able to do that even better as the game goes on.
Yeah, but honestly, Mundo has the same issue that we talked about with Olaf, right? He's really just, his only option is to just kind of walk up to you, and by the time he gets there, the Victor and Jinx will have chunked out a good amount of his HP. And of course, he does have the sustain as well as the Olaf, so we'll see whether that actually comes out on top, or if the damage that comes out before he can get there is enough. As they engage in here onto Deprapine, falling down immediately, as well as Yauma, and they're still going. Me Crit You Now and Drip Irrigation playing such a strong front line there, just going in as deep as possible despite being so low on the HP bars, but it is enough to get the rest of the team in so that they can finish them off, and that's 4 kills down for the side of Collective Effort as well as this Dragon.
Yeah, and Flan is having a game right here. 5-0 and 3 on the Jinx. Looks like he's got a lot of gold in his back pocket, about 1,300 when he goes back to be able to spend that. Should be very close to picking up his second item, and that's just a huge fight for Collective Effort to get themselves back into this game. Drip Irrigation, it looked like he might have dove a little bit too deep to start that fight, but once again, it's just the power being shown off of this Gore Drinker item that he was able to pick up, keeping himself alive with that sustain, and ultimately not dropping all throughout the fight. And another difference as we go into a pause here, and is quickly going to be canceled out, is that Me Crit You Now was able to use the Stand United to get into the fight, whereas Kevin Chen, despite his teleport being available, he did not use it. So there was just the difference of having an entire another member there by Collective Effort, and if you're a Lost Chapter, you just need to look to protect Deprapine a lot more in these team fights, because he showed us last game, if he's able to stay alive on this Ashe in the backline, he can put down so much damage. However, if he does fall early, you are missing out in the damage department a lot from Lost Chapter, because nothing kind of brings that same DPS. Sure, Zoe can do a lot of
You now gonna get chased down by the Mundo here, getting hit by Cleaver after Cleaver. Drip Irrigation does come in to try and counter that engage, but look at Gregorio on the side coming in as well. Crescent Guard is going to push Gregorio off for a while, but the second axe hits, finishing off the kill, and that's going to be 2 kills over to the side of Lost Chapter right now. Gregorio going really deep onto Flan, but can't actually finish him off. Look at the heals coming out from Soraka. Is going to keep Flan alive for this foreseeable future, picking up a double kill onto Shin Yuna, and Kevin Chen is pretty low, but they don't have anything else to keep chasing, as well as Yauma coming up to defend. It ends up being a 2 for 2, but more kills going over to this Jinx.
Yeah, that's just 2 more in the bank. Now a 700 gold bounty being picked up here by Flan, and I do have to say, I feel like there was maybe just a little bit of the team not being on the same page there from Lost Chapter, as Gregorio continued to dive in when we did see Kevin Chen backing off. Now, the original play, as Filiberto going to drop a really nice gravity well
got
there.
popped down from Deprapine. That's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Just trying to stay there. They really wanted to take down that turret. But the original engagement by Kevin Chen and Gregorio looks great. They surely are much stronger in the 2v2 top laner and jungler versus Drip Irrigation and Me Crit, but they just go too deep, and right there we do see the value that Cidermill brings on this Soraka. I think Flan is 100% dead to Gregorio if he doesn't have the Soraka in the backline, just dropping down the Wish, dropping down heal heal after heal after heal onto her AD carry, and again, you know, that's just the reason why they pick up this Soraka cider mill, showing us how it's done.
I'm so concerned about this, Jinx, because Flan is 7-0-3, has a full 700 gold bounty on him right now. Already has the Kraken Slayer as well, and looks to be going for the lower Dominix Regard right after. So you talked about how Kevin Chen and Gregorio are going to be able to run in, but with that in mind, they're going to get shredded so quickly by Flan with this build.
Yeah, and if you're not able to kill, at this point for Lost Chapter, if you can't kill Jinx, there is absolutely no way that you can win a team fight, because she just brings such consistent damage here, and especially with the number of items that she's going to be able to pick up. I do think it's interesting to note the itemization. There has been a Last Whisper here picked up by the Jinx, so we'll see if she decides to go maybe with some healing reduction next, or if she wants to finish the early Lord Dominic's Regards as actually Depperpine did in game 2. So lots of options here, lots of gold in the pocket of Flan, so we'll see what he decides to do. He is sitting on almost 1700 gold at the moment, and next dragon is still about a minute to spawn, so both teams just trying to do a little bit of farming, trying to pick up their next items. It is just about one item completed for almost every champion, it looks like, all across the board so far.
Oh, and while everyone's finishing up their first item, starting to build their second, Flan's already finished 2 full items, already has the lower Dominix Regard as well, and I don't see how they're going to win a 5v5 unless they can find a really early pick with that Crystal Enchanted Arrow or the Sleepy Bubble Trouble from Zoe. Because once the fight actually starts, Flan's just going to be one-shotting people at this point.
Yeah, and also just notable that the Flash has come back up for Flan, as well as the Cleanse, so that just makes it even more difficult. Even if you are able to land the, you know, the start of the engage by Zoe or Ashe, he will be able to just cleanse that one out to keep himself alive. But both teams posturing around this dragon, I think we're going to see a fight here.
I'm going to Drip Irrigation, but look at the healing coming over from Soraka! They don't have any healing reduction on their carries yet. Oh, well, they do have the Executioner's Calling, so that is going to help a bit. But Zoe doesn't have the Oblivion Orb quite yet, so Soraka is just healing everyone back up to full as soon as they get chunked out. And Transquisitor Arrow is going to throw in, but Drip Irrigation going into the backline into 4 members alone, and the Crescent Guardian is going to be enough to keep himself alive. Depperpine picks up that kill, and now they're trying to chase for more. Gregorio goes in. It does get chunked out pretty low. Kevin Chen as well, but Depperpine's full HP right now as Shin Yuna goes and picks up a heal, and that's actually going to be pretty significant for this, giving them an HP advantage. But Depperpine gets stunned up by the gravity field. Shield Bill comes out as well, and Mikryu now flashes in to get the taunt on them. And Flan's just going to clean up this fight along with Filiberto. That should be the dragon for them. Oh, Filiberto wants to go for more. A huge laser onto 2 members. Shin Yuna's going to fall. There's the gravity field going to slow up and stun Kevin Chen. That's a shutdown over to Filiberto. It's 4 members for 1. And that's going to be dragon as well for them. So now they're going to even up to 2-2.
Yeah, and that was just really unfortunate in the middle of the team fight. 2 things. First, Depperpine getting caught by the gravity well, but more importantly, Gregorio just disconnected from the game in the middle of that team fight. You saw him running back towards the base. That's certainly not where he would have wanted to run if he had his choice. So just honestly a little bit lucky there from Collective Effort. Not to say that they couldn't have won the team fight if Gregorio was still in it, but that DC is just really going to hurt Lost Chapter. And as we get a little bit of lag from the spectator here, it is going to be 2 dragons to 2. The Infernal Soul will eventually be on the table, but the dragons have been even out by Collective Effort. And, you know, I talked at the beginning of the game about how Filiberto and Flan were going to be so crucial to this team comp because of the damage that they're able to, well, because of really being the sole damage between these 2 champions from Collective Effort, and both of them sitting at 0 death, 4-0-7 for Filiberto, 8-0-4 for Flan, and unless we can see Lost Chapter getting into the backline and finally actually being able to take them down. That's the important part. Just because you can get on top of them doesn't mean that you can stop the Soraka from continuously healing them. It's just such a big problem. But I will note that I think that, you know, as much as we need healing reduction from Lost Chapter to combat Cider Mill on the Soraka, we also need healing reduction for collective effort, ideally, to deal with Kevin Chen as well, because Kevin Chen was running amok on the backline, ultimately wasn't able to pick up the kills on Filiberto or Flan, but the team fight goes a little bit differently. Maybe Deprapine doesn't get stuck on that gravity well, your jungler doesn't disconnect from the game, and we could have seen it going the other way.
Yeah, and honestly, they already have all the healing reduction they need. They really only need it on Filiberto, because once he drops the Chaos Storm and drops his laser, he's pretty much going to hit everyone that goes into any choke to try and run them down with that healing reduction. So they have everything they need to take over this game, really, and with how much healing Soraka's doing, it might even be better for Gregorio and Kevin Chen to just run in onto Cider Mill and finish him off first. But that's an issue again. All this time they're wasting running up towards them, finishing off Cider Mill. It gives Flan and Filiberto so much time to do all this DPS in the fight and just get the front line out as quickly as possible for Lost Chapter. So as this game progresses, honestly, it's going to get harder and harder for them. They need to find a way to bring the game back into their favor right now, or on at least on this next objective, maybe. If they give over that sole point to collective effort, I think this game's done.
Absolutely, and you know, it is still a very close game, just about a 1.1k gold lead for collective effort, but there's still plenty of item slots left for this Victor as well as for this Jinx.
Kevin Chen having to burn the ultimate early, but now Gregorio's here. Drip Irrigation and Filiberto aren't really the strongest members of the team right now. But look at the AoE damage coming out from Filiberto with that Chaos Storm. Is actually able to turn the fight with that Stand United as well. And that's going to be 2 kills going over to collective effort. Just Lost Chapter seems really desperate to make plays now. Yeah, they should, honestly, but it's just so unfortunate that it's not working out for them with just how ahead collective effort is. You brought the gold lead, but honestly, it really doesn't matter with where that gold is focused on, right? Flan and Filiberto are so strong now, with pretty much all the gold funneled into them, and now with this Baron, I definitely see them probably just doing a 1-3-1 and getting a bunch of pressure on the map for that next dragon.
Yeah, and right there in that skirmish in the top lane, we see Cider Mill's ultimate with the Soraka using the Wish in order to just barely keep Filiberto and Drip Irrigation alive, but it ends up making all the difference. Neither of them dropping in that team fight, and then the moment that you see that healing come out, it buys enough time for the rest of collective effort to be able to come back them up in the top lane, and that's when you know, if you're Lost Chapter, that this is done. Kevin Chen trying to retreat, but it's just too late. Baron going over to collective effort, and at this point they have created a pretty nice gold lead for themselves. They are now almost 3,000 gold in the advantage. So as you mentioned, especially with the gold being so centered on Flan with this Jinx pick, it's hard to see Lost Chapter coming back into this game. 30 seconds on the next dragon. Lost Chapter would certainly like to challenge for this one. Of course, they have not given up yet, but it's going to take some kind of really nice Ash Arrow from Deprapine or Sleepy Trouble Bubble from Zoe to start out the fight to try to pick up some kind of...
Oh, Shin Yuna gets to sleep onto Filiberto, but the Gravity Field's going to zone them out a little bit. Does have the flash to keep himself out. Is going to pick up the kill onto Shin Yuna, but is going to fall to the rest of the team. Is not actually! Gregorio falls just before he can actually finish off Filiberto. And now Drip Irrigation and Meat Crit You now chasing down Kevin Chen. This Mundo is pretty tanky, and they don't have much damage to actually chase him down that much. Deprapine is here as well to stave off the push, but that's 3 members down. And that should be the Dragon Infernal Soul going over to collective effort here in just a moment, unless some random seal happens. Enchanted Crystal Arrow is up. It can damage the dragon if it hits the champion at the same time, but doesn't look like that option is going to be available to them as the dragon just melts down here to Flan.
No, and the third dragon going over to collective effort. Now they do see themselves on soul point. So if they're not able to win the game within the next 5 minutes, they certainly will be able to do it should they be able to pick up the soul. And once again, this healing from the Soraka, it just makes such a massive difference in these team fights. Filiberto just looking impossible to kill, even when they bring him down to 100 health. He uses his Q with the Victor to get the extra move speed, has the fancy feet to be able to dodge out on some of the damage from Gregorio, get away from this Olaf, and continue to keep himself alive. And for the first time, I mean, he played well in game one, but for the first time in this series, Filiberto really looking like the MVP player that he is on this Victor. Absolutely flawless, still yet to die, despite the fact that Shin Yuna has put up a pretty good game on this Zoe, has been able to land quite a few picks. We've seen him chunking out quite a few members from collective effort in the team fights as well, and I just really don't know what you do right now if you're Lost Chapter. To be honest, I think maybe your time is best spent planning out your draft for the next game, because getting so... I don't think you can continue to give this amount of scaling to collective effort. We've seen two games that have been advantage towards collective effort. They brought out this Victor pick, and also, you know, it was the Ashe in game one, the Jinx here in game three, so just lots of scaling coming from the mid AD position, and it seems like that's their formula for success here.
Yeah, I mean, if one Fed carry wasn't enough, now collective effort has two with the Victor, 709 and 20 stacks on that Magi Soul Stealer. So there's just way too much damage for them to deal with, and again, without being able to get a pick onto the Soraka, even if you can get onto Filiberto and Flan and get some damage out onto them, it's just going to be healed back up by the Soraka. And it's just so hard for them to fight now. They have to look for some kind of pick. They have to get some kind of vision control in the river on one of these sides. See if they can look for a pick, and that might be able to happen here in the mid lane, but no. 3 members strong in the mid lane here, as well as Filiberto coming up, and they're going to look to engage onto Yauma. Yauma doesn't have flash, does have the exhaust, but isn't going to waste it as the kill goes over to Drip Irrigation. Now on a killing spree, looking pretty good on the Xin Zhao so far.
Yeah, and I think that that's something worth talking about as well, Naka, is that, you know, the Xin Zhao did go over in this draft for the first time towards Drip Irrigation. You know, he has looked pretty strong on it, but with that being said, he did waste a lot of his time in the early game up in the top lane. Now, Kevin Chen's advantage, you know, hasn't been able to affect the game as much as it did in game 2, but with that being said, I do think Drip Irrigation has done a really nice job here. He has served as the primary source of engage on his team, which is certainly not something that usually falls onto the shoulders of something like a Xin Zhao, although I was almost laughing earlier in the team fight because Cider Mill, he did end up picking up the Shurelia's battle song as his first item, and it does provide a little bit more of kind of an engage sort of power to be able to speed up your team, but Cider Mill overall, looking at his score, I mean, we've been talking a lot about Filiberto and Flan just because they're the ones throwing out the majority of this damage, but Cider Mill, 0, 0, and 19, only hasn't been involved in one of the kills for collective effort so far throughout this game, and that's a perfect support score.
Yeah, now with this pressure they have, Dragon coming up in a minute, they're going to look to get control of this bottom side jungle, taking the blue, giving it over to Filiberto, and that's actually going to be huge on this Victor, being able to dish out even more of these lasers just to stave off any kind of attempt that Lost Chapter could have to get into that river. Dragon coming up in 40 seconds now, with the side lanes pushing in. Collective Effort has all the pressure they need to go for this, but it looks like Lost Chapter wants to fight before that can even happen. Enchanted Crystal Arrow is going to come down and land onto Cider Mill, but no one sees it, so Soraka is going to be perfectly fine here. Yauma flashes in with the Unbreakable to try and stave off any damage coming out onto the rest of the members, but Flan takes him down, dominating now, and Filiberto chunks out Deprapine for a second kill. Kevin Chen going to fall as well, and now with 10 seconds left on the Dragon, that's going to be Infernal Soul over to Collective Effort unless they want to try and go for more here in the bottom lane. 30 seconds left on Deprapine and Yauma, 40 seconds left on Kevin Chen. They could try and go for more if they want to, but honestly, I think all they get is an inhibitor if they really want to push this. We have seen them end on less, though, so...
Yeah, I think this is going to be the game from Collective Effort. They are going to push down on the inhibitor here, and just with the amount of range that they're able to bring, I thought they could be able to end it, but instead, you know, they don't want to throw their lead, especially when there is an absolutely free Infernal Soul on the table, so they're going to back off, pick up that Infernal Soul, and then I can only imagine that the Baron and the game will be to follow. And you pointed out Depperpine with an absolutely beautiful enchanted crystal arrow coming out there to open up this fight, but it's just too far onto the backline. The Cidermill is already keeping himself very safe back there, and there's just not the ability to dive back there in time from Gregorio or Kevin Chen. So I like the idea from Lost Chapter, but at this point in the game, they've just fallen so far behind that it's not enough. And so they are going to look to set up this Death Brush here, see if they can pick up a kill, as they know that Lost Chapter is going to come towards the Baron. We'll see if Me Crit You Now will face check.
Oh, Me Crit You Now finds them, but might be a little bit too late as they run in. Sleeve Bubble Trouble is going to land onto Me Crit You Now, but Drip Irrigation going into the rest of the team. Yama gets picked off immediately, as well as Kevin Chen falling, and the damage is just too much now with both carries so fed and the Infernal Soul with 4 Infernal Dragon stacked on top of it. They should be able to just run down the rest of the team here and end the game off of this. Teleport coming in from Shin Yuna to try and defend the base as Me Crit You Now also teleported in to try and finish them off. But the rest of the team is coming in here. Backups on the way as they push through the mid lane here. Take out the mid lane inhibitor turret, but they don't even need it. As the taunt lands onto Shin Yuna, doesn't have flash, isn't able to get out of that, and that's another kill over to Flan. Look how fed these carries are as they shove out the lane. Shove out the waves and take down these Nexus turrets, as well as the Nexus going about to fall here, and that's 2-1 for Collective Effort. That's now match point for them, as well as the entire playoffs.
And it's easy to highlight the carries for Collective Effort for being responsible to win this game. Certainly they did have a wonderful performance, but I just want to point out Cidermill, 0-0-26. There was only 2 kills that he did not participate throughout this game. An almost perfect performance on Soraka throughout this one for him, and this team composition from Collective Effort is just so strong. They played it on Monday against Predictive Gaming Odin, and it went with kind of a similar effect. So I think that it's really going to come down to the draft here in Game 4 for Lost Chapter. How can you adapt and maybe take away some of these pieces to the puzzle from Collective Effort to make sure that they don't get this again? For me, they need to take away the Soraka.
Yeah, and they need to change up the draft quite a bit. They had no way to get in onto anyone here. Just giving this objective control based team so much control over the river, so much control over the fight, and just 2 tanks that can only just run in. Don't really have any way to get onto anyone other than just walking up to them. It's really not going to be enough for them if they try and draft something similar in the next game.
Yeah, and it almost makes me go back to the draft and think about the fact that Lost Chapter, they chose to go with the Olaf rather than the Jarvan. I think Jarvan would have been a lot better in this team composition for them to be able to lock down the Jinx and the Victor. I don't know, I mean, you know, that might not have been the only piece to the puzzle for Lost Chapter, but certainly it would have been something that locked those carries into position a little bit longer for Shin Yuna to perhaps be able to, you know, hit a few more Qs on that Zoe. But we're going to take a short break. When we come back, game point for finals of the CCS. Collective Effort has a chance to close it out and crown themselves as the first champions in this Classic Championship Series. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back. are back for what could be the last game of the CCS for this season, with Lost Chapter going back over to the blue side, and the blue side has been so absolutely critical throughout these games. We have seen blue side take the victory in 2 out of the 3 matches, and now for Lost Chapter, we'll see how they choose to, interact with the ban phase here. They do stick with the Ziggs and the Aurelia ban, which they did come out with in all 3 of the other games, I believe. Similarly, for Collective Effort, they're going to stick with the Syndra as well as Misfortune. So with Trundle being the last ban for Lost Chapter, I'm interested to see how they're going to kind of prevent Collective Effort from coming out with the same team comp that they did in game 3, because that was extremely powerful.
Yeah, I definitely expect to see the Sinjab ban here in just a second, as was the same as game 2. But no, they're going to ban the J4 instead, giving Sinjab over to Lost Chapter if they do decide to pick it. It was banned against them in game 2, so I'd imagine that would be the pick here. And since Gregorio's been performing so well over the course of this series, I'd imagine they want to give it to him again. But no, they're going to pick the Lee Sin instead, which has also been banned against them throughout the series.
Yeah, and even though it gives Jin Zhao over to Collective Effort, I love the Lee Sin here for Lost Chapter, for Gregorio, his favorite champion, in my opinion, his best champion. And when everything is on the line, you throw down with the best that you've got with a comfort pick. That is the Lee Sin. And I mean, not to mention that it is an extremely strong pick in this current meta. So Collective Effort, they're going to pair up the Jin Zhao up with the Shen. And what this shows to me is they are really trying to put together a similar team comp to what they did in game 3, which it looked very impenetrable from Collective Effort. So we'll see if Lost Chapter, do they decide to take any of those pieces again away from Collective Effort? They're happy with picking the Dr. Mundo again, but this time it looks like it's going to be a little bit of adaptation with the Aphelios coming out on the blue side. I do like giving Deprapine, the #1 AD in the CCS, the ability to have this late game scaling option, because it did feel like, although he performed okay in game 3 with his Ashe, there was a certain point at which you just knew he was going to be outscaled heavily by the Jinx. So Aphelios, gives a lot more of an option to continue to scale. TF continuing to be banned out by Collective Effort, and the Soraka was picked up as the 3rd pick. So Ashe banned from Lost Chapter. I would heavily expect Jinx to be the next ban for Lost Chapter. Take away that hyper carry. Sure, the Victor was an issue, but I felt that the bigger issue was the late game scaling ability of this Jinx. So I really want to see Lost Chapter ban that one out next.
And instead the Nautilus can be banned, and the Jinx can be banned instead for the side of Lost Chapter, as you predicted there. It's pretty understandable here, as the Soraka was already picked. I just want to make sure that that doesn't come through. Seems like the rest of the draft is pretty similar here. I wonder if they're going to go for a different hyper carry here to match with this team composition. But instead they're going to go with the Ezreal. Very interesting. So this is actually going to change the playstyle of this composition quite a bit. Normally it would just be the Shen and Soraka just making sure that Jinx can do whatever she wants, but now with the Ezreal here, they're definitely going to be playing a lot more towards this potential mid lane pick. I wonder if it's going to be the Victor again, and Collective Effort's just going to run it back with a pretty similar composition, or if they're going to go with something a little bit different here. Maybe a different hyper carry in the mid lane that the Shen and Soraka would be buffing up instead.
Yeah,
Reliphilios is a pretty good matchup to pair with each other, and especially into this immobile Soraka. Definitely a very good option for them here. And with Lee Sin picked up, I feel like they're looking to try and push back on this bottom lane a little bit more than they did last game, and make sure, if not Ezreal, the Soraka at least is very far behind to the point where she'd probably just get one-shot by someone at any point. And in fact, Lost Chapter is actually going to be the one to pick up the Victor here on B5 instead, not giving Collective Effort the chance to even pick it up. So Filiberto is going to be picking up a different mid laner here. Won't be able to pick up that Victor again this time around. I wonder if the Echo might come out a little bit more aggressive there. And we are going to see Yone being hovered is going to be locked in. So that is the hyper carry going over to the mid lane instead of the bottom lane. Ezreal being picked as more of a supportive champion here. This does give him a little bit of weird damage spread because they don't really have that much magic damage. Yone does do some magic damage, of course, with his passive, but overall, they're very AD focused this time around, which gives Mundo a good opportunity to stack on the armor, making him even more killable than he was last game. But with that in mind, though, the Yone is a very good option to turn into a hyper carry with the Shen and Soraka helping him out. So I definitely really like this coming out from Collective Effort, and Yone is definitely the kind of champion that you're going to see from Filiberto.
Yeah, and I like that Shin Yuna stepped up to the plate and picked the victor. My only concern is when you're making this move to kind of pick up a champion that you saw the enemy mid laner being so powerful on, my question is, are Lost Chapter grabbing the victor just to take it away from Filiberto, which does bring some power in and of itself, or is this actually something that Shin Yuna is well practiced on and can make a big difference on? Because, Victor, not at a lower skill level, not necessarily the most difficult champion, but to be able to pilot it to the fullest extent of its power, it's certainly something that is, it takes a lot of practice, it takes a lot of skill, and not that Shin Yuna isn't a very skilled mid laner, but we'll see how well they're able to fare in lane, especially in a heavily kind of pressured mid lane matchup against something like this Yone. So I think it's really hyped to see Filiberto picking up the Yone here in Game 4, when they have the chance to end out the series. But I would have to agree with what you said, Naka. I really don't like the fact that they're pigeonholing themselves into so much AD damage here for Collective Effort. Dr. Mundo is just going to have an absolute field day. I can't imagine he's going to be pressured again too much by the Shen. We saw Kevin Chen, even despite getting ganked several times in the early to mid game there, just took some huge advantages against Me Crit You Now. So I would expect that matchup would probably go similarly here in Game 4. So we'll just have to see how both these team comps end up turning out. I like that Lost Chapter were able to get those 80 carry bans out in the second phase of bans just to force the Ezreal for Collective Effort. Now, what I will say is, it was difficult enough for them to kill Jinx last game. It's going to be even more difficult to kill Ezreal in this one, because Ezreal already a slippery champion, and with the Soraka there to, dish out those heals as needed, as well as the Stand United, he's going to be pretty much invincible.
Yeah, this is really going to come down to whether Lost Chapter can get that early lead. Otherwise, I imagine Yone is just going to blow up very quickly as soon as he gets the 2 items. With Shen and Soraka backing him up, it's going to be extremely hard to play against this team composition coming up from the side of Collective Effort. But Lost Chapter has shown their ability to get those early leads, especially Gregorio, and he's now on a champion that just enables that even more on the Lee Sin here, and has so much setup from these lanes as well to be able to facilitate these ganks. So it's really going to come down again to whether Gregorio can get those early leads for his team.
Yeah, and what we generally see with Lost Chapter when Gregorio is able to run this Lee Sin is kind of honestly a funnel of kills over to the side of this Lee. Generally we see teams kind of avoid putting a lot of the gold or a lot of the kills onto something like a Lee Sin, just because it doesn't scale into the late game very well. But Gregorio almost makes this look like a scaling jungler pick, generally, just because of how strong he is on it. So I would look for a lot of early ganks to come out from Gregorio onto the top lane, from Kevin Chen, who has the setup with the slows for this Mundo, as well as Shin Yuna. That's just generally his tried and true lane to camp, is the mid lane. The Victor will have the gravity well, and a little bit of priority if he's able to take that early lead, just because of the range versus melee advantage that he does have against the Yone. So Gregorio, the onus is on him to start the tempo early on in this jungle and get Lost Chapter off to a good start. But we're going to jump onto the Rift in just a couple minutes, so stay with us. It could be the last game of our CCS season, with Collective Effort trying to go for match point against Lost Chapter. Don't go anywhere. Don't change that dial, because we're going to be right back. And we are back for what could be the last game of the CCS season, Game 4 of our Grand Finals. Lost Chapter headed back over to the blue side, taking on Collective Effort on the red side. And this Yone pick is very, very hype, coming out from our CCS MVP, Filiberto, showing us something new here. We haven't seen it in the semifinals or the finals so far, and I generally not gonna think of Yone as something that you need to have a lot of practice on in order to make it happen. So excited to see what he's able to do on this pick, as he will be the primary hyper carry for this Collective Effort squad.
Yeah, and we're seeing a pretty standard start here from both sides. Nothing too fancy, as both sides just want to make sure that they get through this early game without any hiccups coming out at level 1. As it is match point for the side of Collective Effort. There's a lot of pressure on this match right now.
Absolutely, and Cider Mill had such an incredible game in Game 3 on this Soraka. He does get it again here in Game 4, and I'm just wondering what Lost Chapter can possibly do to try to, make sure that the Soraka just doesn't have the same impact on the game that he was able to have last time, because it was just so incredibly immense. Obviously, doesn't have the same type of hyper carry to prop himself up as he did in Game 1, or Game 3, I'm sorry, because he has Ezreal as his AD carry instead of Jinx. But beyond that, I mean, the Jinx was able to be funneled a lot of kills very, very early on in the game. So if that doesn't happen again, it could be just a totally different match from Lost Chapter, who are really, really desperate to send us to a Game 5.
Yeah, and you can already see Shin Yuna trying to make as much use of that range as he can in this matchup. Already bullying out Filiberto a bit. Yone does have a decent amount of sustain, though, and with the Dorn shield being picked up, is going to be even safer in this lane. Both solo laners, actually, from the side of Collective Effort, taking that Dorn shield. So we're going to see a very slow start here from Collective Effort, just making sure they don't give anything early over to Gregorio on this Lee Sin.
Yeah, and I really like that itemization early on here from Filiberto, just because when you're playing the Yone that you're not going to, as a little bit of a trade coming out.
Well, Filiberto getting a pretty decent trade here, actually. Misses the Q, though. I think that was actually pretty important, as that Q would have given him quite a bit of extra damage there to chunk out Shin Yuna even further and make him second guess walking up to trade against this Yone.
Absolutely, and we do see Drip Irrigation coming here into this mid lane. Looks like Shin Yuna could be in a bit of trouble here.
Oh, when becomes lightning is gonna miss, but the knockup lands from Filiberto, forcing out the flash from Shin Yuna, but it's not gonna be quite enough, as Drip Irrigation does pick up first blood off of the flash follow. And we're already seeing the tempo here sweep over to the side of Collective Effort, despite Gregorio being in the area. Just wasn't there quite fast enough to actually counter gank, unfortunately. But very good from Drip Irrigation to find that gank so early in the game.
And Gregorio, he wasn't there because he was up in the top lane instead, trying to pay a visit to Kevin Chen, who does have really good gank setup on this Mundo. Now, if we check out the summoner spells, we do see that Me Crit You now was forced to expend the flash, so there was that picked up as a result of the gank by Gregorio, but in exchange, Shin Yuna is going to fall into the mid lane, and you have to feel a little bit worried if you're Lost Chapter when that happens, as we do see probably a 2v2 here.
Oh, Filiberto saw Gregorio, but still went in onto Shin Yuna. Gets a good chunk of damage onto him, and they should be able to shove this into the turret on this next wave. I think Drip Irrigation knows that Filiberto wants to force this in, either to look for a roam or to reset, so he's going to help him clear this wave. He's going to smite the minion just to make sure it kind of happens even faster. And neither mid lane has teleport, so once these waves get shoved in, they don't really have a way to find a good reset afterwards.
No, not at all. And at this point, as we do see quite a bit of a roam over here onto the top side by Filiberto and Drip Irrigation, forcing Gregorio to move away from the top lane. But we do see that at this point, if you're Shin Yuna, you're really just waiting to be able to pick up a little bit more AP. We see that he did back pretty early in TP to the lane so that he could get that tier, but really waiting to pick up something like the Lost Chapter, and then eventually that Luden's Echo to have the sort of wave clear such that he doesn't have to continually interact with Filiberto in this lane. If you're Rise, you obviously, as we saw from Filiberto himself in the last game as well as game 1, you want to have kind of this passive play style where you are able to sit back and just continue throwing out those lasers time after time to clear the waves and do that sort of AoE damage. But until Shin Yuna can pick up some of those items, it's going to be difficult for him. And we do see Filiberto just trading here really well early on the Yone.
Oh, Filiberto does have the knock-up. Chaos Storm is going to force Filiberto to back up, though. But that's the ultimate down now from Shin Yuna, making it very scary for him to try and duel any further if an engage does go down onto him. And Filiberto does have the ultimate now. Fate sealed, if needed, for that extra damage, extra CC. So this mid lane's looking to already go into the favor of Filiberto very, very early on.
Yeah, and but also look at this top lane with a 20 CS lead. There are some minions under the turret here, but for Kevin Chen, he did at one point there have a 2-level lead, so probably about a 1.5 level advantage for Kevin Chen in the top lane. But looks like Filiberto, he's in trouble.
Here, Flash comes down onto Filiberto, but he did buffer the Q before Yamo could get the knockup out. Does force the Fate sealed out of him to get himself over the wall, but very aggressive gank from the side of Lost Chapter there.
And I do like it because Shin Yuna just needed a little bit of a bailout from this mid lane, especially after he used his ultimate with Yoma in the river here. I wonder if there will be a little bit of a fight over the Scuttle Crab. Doesn't look like there will be, but, Shin Yuna, he wasn't able to push out this lane all the way, and now he's just a little bit stuck here. He doesn't have teleport. Filiberto obviously doesn't have the disadvantage of being dependent on mana like the Victor is. Also has pretty quick wave clear, so Shin Yuna forced to back off.
Oh, Gregorio goes in for a gank on the top side. Me Crit you now does get the taunt onto him, but doesn't have flash. So that should be the kill. Going over to Gregorio, very important that he actually picked that up for himself. They are going to answer on the bottom side. So very good adaptation from them going for this once they find Gregorio up in the top side. But that is a kill over to this Lee Sin, getting him rolling.
Lee Sin does pick up the kill. Critical for Gregorio playing this jungler that is supposed to be so strong in the early game to be able to grab that advantage. But I like that Drip Irrigation also is reading the map. He heads straight down to the Dragon with his bot lane. Flan and Cider Mill have been able to push this one in throughout the lane so far. And having that control does mean that they also have much more vision in the river. You can kind of see the vision line that they've been able to establish so far. And they do pick up the Baron. But a little bit of a CS lead for Deprapine early on. It will be pretty close, but just like last game, there was kind of this fallback win condition for collective effort of having the scaling mid lane and the scaling AD carry. Lost Chapter has something similar this game. As long as they can continue to gain items on Shin Yuna and Deprapine, as we do see a very strong trade here in the mid lane from Filiberto, just absolutely bullying Shin Yuna. But as long as these two carries from Lost Chapter continue to have item slots, they do have this fallback that they can go to, and it looks like we're getting a little bit of a lag from Shin Yuna right now, so we are going into a short pause here. We are aware of some issues that Riot was having with custom games, having a little bit of a lag, but it looks like this was just a momentary thing as we are right back into the game.
Yeah, and with Herald up, neither team has been looking to go for it quite yet. Drip Irrigation does have Prio if he wants to make a first move onto it right now, as we do go into that little bit of spectator pause after the in-game pause. But we should get back into it pretty soon. But yeah, you see Gregorio just now going up towards this top side, whereas Drip Irrigation already finishing up his camps on that side. They could look for the Herald if they want to, but Drip Irrigation just going to go into the bottom side, take his bottom side camps. Now, Gregorio doesn't actually have information on that, so they don't know where Drip Irrigation is quite yet. But if they did get that information, Gregorio could go up towards that Herald. I'm just waiting to see which side wants to go for this Herald first. Plates are still up if either side wants to go for it. Filiberto goes in onto Shin Yuna. The flash is going to dodge the fake sealed, forcing Filiberto to go back, and neither side is going to pick up a kill, but the flash does get burned from Shin Yuna.
Yeah, and Shin Yuna with a really nice gravity well there. If I don't know if I saw it right, but it looked like Filiberto actually ended up getting stunned by the gravity well after he snapped forward with his ultimate. So that was just kind of very interesting to see, and I do like that Shin Yuna did deal with that all in pretty well. But keep in mind, he was forced to expend the flash, which is a really valuable cooldown for the victor. Drip Irrigation should look now to try to take some kind of advantage. As Mikrit now is going to taunt up Kevin Chen
this is
onto
not
this
good for
turret.
Mikrit now. He took some damage during that trade. Now Gregorio's here, comes in with a flash kick, lands the Sonic Wave onto Mikrit now, and the kill goes over to Kevin Chen. Meanwhile, on the bottom side, they're going to look to try and trade kills. Going in onto Yama, flashes in to try and finish him off. Does have the Magnet Storm, but it's not going to be quite enough as Drip Irrigation picks up that kill for himself. Cider Mill taking a bit of damage from Deprapine, but it's not going to do much else. So the support does fall. But look at the gold lead that came out through the top side. They got plates off of that. They got the kill. And Gregorio's just getting pretty far ahead on this Lee Sin.
Yeah, and it is about a 30 CS, or more than a 30 CS advantage for this Dr. Mundo, who is now going to find himself about 1,500 gold in the advantage.
Deprapine with the Moonlight Vigil flashes in to finish him off as well. And that's Cider Mill going down. It's just a ton of damage in such short amount of time coming out from Deprapine. Beautifully played there.
Yeah, and he was 1v2 in that situation, so
just Drip Irrigation might get caught here. No, it's just going to walk out. Deprapine doesn't have any CC to lock him down. Looked a little bit scary there for a moment.
Yeah, but Deprapine, just such an incredible play as Filiberto is going to go
more
forward.
action coming out over and over as the Chaos Storm gets dropped down onto Filiberto. Filiberto flashing back in with the Fate Seal is going to pick up the kill onto Shin Yuna, but now has two members on his back. Here comes the San United, now it's a 2v2. Gregorio going to get taunted up as Filiberto stacking up more damage on top of him. Yama is trying to protect Gregorio to the best of his ability, but he can't really do anything. Gotta get up as Gregorio gets the kick back down onto Filiberto, gets a smite heal off of the Raptors as well, and is going to live. But Filiberto just making the plays right now.
Yeah, Filiberto, he has so much ability to do things on his own with this pick that he has, having the Yone, so just really showing us how much he is able to do on that champion. But now with Kevin Chen picking up that turret, looks like Mikrit now might be in trouble.
Mikrit now getting pretty low here. I don't think there's a way for him to live this. He's just going to get smacked down by that briefcase coming out from Kevin Chen. And that's going to be his second kill. Mikrit now is now 0-3-0. And Yama goes in, forces the flash out of Cyberman and just laughs at him afterwards. Kevin Chen, though, might get caught out here by Filiberto and Drip Irrigation. Very crucially, though, the wind becomes lightning does not land, but it's not going to matter as Filiberto is going to finish off the kill onto Kevin Chen. Gets a little bit of a shutdown gold for himself there, and now Yone is looking pretty strong.
Yone is definitely looking very strong, but it will be the Dragon answered back from that kill because Drip Irrigation was seen up into the top lane. Gregorio feels totally comfortable to go for that second Dragon. We are going to see the Infernal Rift come out once again. Has it been the Infernal Rift every single game? I feel like it's definitely at least 3 of the games. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know why I was... Yeah, oh yeah, you're right. But anyways,
a lot of Infernal Dragon this game though, so very excited for that. Honestly, it's made these later game fights, especially around the Dragon, so much more exciting, so much more intense to watch, just because of how strong Infernal Dragon is, and Infernal Soul in particular, of course.
Yeah, so if you're collective effort, you've got to be extremely happy.
Fights across the map as in the bottom lane, the flash gets forced out of flank. Meanwhile, on the mid side, Shin Yuna decides not even to flash, knowing he was already dead to Filiberto. But Drip Irrigation does pick up the kill and now is on a killing spree. 301 on the Xin Zhao, playing very well in the Xin Zhao. As they drop the Herald mid, is going to get that turret down for them. And should be able to get a second charge here onto
again?
The second turret here, Gregorio. I'm not sure if he wants to give up his life to try and stop this charge necessarily. So it is going to go through. But the lead's just getting further and further ahead for the mid-jungle duo here from Collective Effort. Even though the gold lead's still over on the side of Lost Chapter, I think the focus of gold here on the Xin Zhao and the Yone is going to be very important.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Top lane though,
Yeah,
Filiberto chasing down Kevin Chen. When Becomes Lightning does land onto him, they're going to try and chase even further. Teleport coming in after the turret, but the taunt is going to keep Kevin Chen in his place. Kill goes over to Drip Irrigation, and now here's Gregorio if they want to try and chase, but it's only 2 members. Filiberto trying to go back in onto Gregorio actually, and Gregorio is going to kick him into the turret with the Magnet Storm forcing him to stay underneath that turret as well. Shutdown goes over to Shin Yuna. And now Gregorio wants more. Is going to get taunted up, and that kill goes over to Me Crit You now. Picking up the first kill for himself, tries to stand United to get out, but the rest of the team is here to back up for Lost Chapter. And that's going to be a 2 for 2 at the end of it.
And even though Gregorio got a little bit of aggressive later in the fight and does end up going down, a beautiful use of the Dragon's Rage kick to knock Filiberto into his own team's turret and take him down. And I think that it was so crucial as well that Shin Yuna ends up being the beneficiary of that shutdown gold. He definitely had fallen quite far behind on this victor, was sitting at 0-3-0. So to pick up that additional gold for him is super important to accelerate the build. And then with Depperpine arriving into the fight later and picking up the other kill onto Me Crit You now, we are seeing the gold go into the right areas for Lost Chapter. And, you know, I was just saying before this fight broke out, if you're Collective Effort, you have to be happy with the amount of gold and advantage that has gone over to Filiberto. But on the other side, Depperpine has been quietly amassing himself a lead in CS, but also now has 2 kills. He does have the Immortal Shield Bow done, as well as the Executioner's Calling, which he picked up first to cut down some of the healing from the Soraka. So this is a nice late game win condition, but Shin Yuna might be in trouble again.
Onto Shin Yuna very early on, gets the knock up. That should be enough to finish him off. Chaos Orb isn't going to do anything as Filiberto finds himself a solo kill.
Yeah, and Shin Yuna, I questioned it a little bit in the draft. You know, he was willing to blind pick this victor, which was working fine for Filiberto, but I just have to wonder whether or not this is something that Shin Yuna really feels comfortable with, because they just don't seem to be displaying the level of mastery on it that they usually do on other champions, and I understand why they wanted to grab this away from Collective Effort, just because it was so powerful in the hands of Philly B, but you just have to wonder whether or not it's worth it in comparison to grabbing something that Shin Yuna is just a little bit more familiar with, and we'll have to see throughout as this game continues on. Certainly later in the game, Victor does continue to scale and can just do things like drop that Chaos Storm for a lot of AoE damage, but as there's 30 seconds toward the next dragon, I think we will see another fight breaking out here shortly. There are still a few more seconds ticking down until Me Crit You now has his teleport available, whereas Kevin Chen should have his. It is almost a 70 CS gap that's now developed in this top lane.
Yeah, and you can see the teleport coming up now from Me Crit You now. Down onto the dragon, teleport being mashed by Kevin Chen. It's going to be a little bit late, but the dragon is now just spawning. And look at all 5 members here dancing in the river. Well, 4 members. Shin Yuna is just clearing out that bottom lane, but it's going to come here. And now it's a 5v5 dance as the dragon finally gets hit. Is going to start hitting some members here. Drip Irrigation going to want to back up a little bit to try and reduce some of that damage, but someone's going to have to take this dragon. Someone's going to have to start a fight. In just a moment, it's just the dance is continuing on as both sides are backing off. Kevin Chen still trying to push up, trying to create space in the river here for his team. And both sides are just going to shove out waves as the dragon resets and is finally start getting hit again. Neither side wanting to be the one to start a fight. I imagine it's going to be Filiberto as he's been the playmaker so far, but look at Yauma on the side, looking for a flank, is going to flash in with the Magnet Storm to 2 members. But look at Drip Irrigation drawing so much aggro onto himself as the rest of the team comes in to follow up. There's the Fate Seal landing onto 3 members there, and everyone's so low now. The Wish barely enough to keep themselves alive. It's a 1-for-1 so far, but the jungler's down for the side of Collective Effort. The dance is still going on as both sides don't want to give up this dragon at all. It's only 1-1, guys. You don't need to fight this so hard, but they are going to go in to do so. Gregorio falls. It's another 1-for-1 trade. And Kevin Chen gets very low, has to flash out. But Shin Yuna, feeling very confident here, is going to step forward and push them back. And with neither side having smite, are they going to start the dragon again? Depropine's still confident in this. Is going to start the dragon. They do have the vision if they want to try and contest this, but I don't know if they will. They're actually taking this very slow, though. Dragon's only down to half HP. But there's no True Shot Barrage, so they are going to finally give it up, and Lost Chapter is going to take their second dragon.
Yeah, and ultimately, it looked so weird that, you know, both of these teams just kind of dancing around, neither one really wanting to be the one to go in first. Finally, Yauma does find the initial engage, but seeing as it's just the third dragon and both teams had picked up one so far, it isn't valuable enough for either team that they're willing to lose members over it. So that's why we kind of saw this really interesting kind of dragon dance, so to speak, around that area. And ultimately, I would say that it comes up a little bit for the advantage of Lost Chapter, just because they did pick up the dragon, in the end. But Filiberto able to stay alive throughout that entire fight. He does have the Immortal Shield Bow, and you can just see how hard, how difficult it is to take down this Yone in the fights, and it does feel like as long as Filiberto is up and available, it's never over for collective effort. So we'll have to see if Lost Chapter can find some way to sort of pick him off later in the fights and be able to shut down that huge amount of pressure that he is able to generate for collective effort. But as it is, on the other side, you know, whenever Depropine is able to be alive, there's similar pressure being generated by the Aphelios as well. But here's Shin Yuna getting jumped on once again by Filiberto. Luckily, he does have the turret that he's able to run under and keep himself alive. But for the rest of this game, Filiberto is going to be able to have so much more pressure in the side lane than Shin Yuna will have on the Victor.
Onto Shin Yuna. The Chaos Storm is going to save him off a bit, but it's not going to be quite enough as the Immortal Shield Bow procs. And Filiberto picks up another solo kill. It's now 5-1-5 on this Yone. 40 CS up, has free reign over that bottom turret, has teleport as well as the rest of the team goes up towards this Herald.
Yeah, this is a little bit of an issue with the laning assignments, as Baron is going to be started up by collective effort. We'll see if they're able to finish it off.
No, that's the thing. No one can match this Yone anymore. He's already way too strong. Maybe Depropine, but would definitely need support to follow up. And with that in mind, that's just too much resources spent over to one lane. They have to either commit to fighting the rest of the team or fighting Filiberto on the side lane and losing something for either way, right? So it's just a really rough time for them right now.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately it does need to be Kevin Chen matching him, as you do see here, just because Filiberto is going to struggle to have a lot of kill pressure. I'm not sure about the Mundo's kill pressure in the other direction. Eventually, I believe the Yone will start to outscale once he can get some healing reduction against the Mundo, but for now, Kevin Chen, he is able to go down there, and I misspoke. Or no, I didn't misspeak. It was the Baron being started up. For some reason, the icon is looking a little funny on my spectator map, so I got a little bit mixed up there. But just collective effort forcing some decision-making out of Lost Chapter, because they start up the Baron. I don't think that they ever really intended to finish that one up, but it did buy a lot of space for Philly B to, you know, push down that first turret and then just continue his push. He was able to chunk, I believe, more than half of the HP out of that bottom lane turret. Did grab about 3/4 of it, so should he return to that one again, it's going to be easy to finish it off. But collective effort, it feels like they're in the driver's seat right now, which is bizarre, given the fact that we do see a slight goal lead, about 1.5k over to the side of Lost Chapter. So just a very, very close game. I think it really just depends on how these team fights end up playing themselves out. It, to me, in my eyes, obviously, there's a lot of supporting cast members, but it really is Filiberto against Depropine. Will Depropine be able to stay alive on this hyper carry Aphelios champion and wipe the enemy team, or will it be Filiberto on this more of an assassination style Yone diving into the back line and taking him out?
Yeah, well, now Kevin Chen does have the healing reduction off the Bramble Vest, as well as the Anthemus Chains to really reduce that damage coming up from Philly Barreto. So as you mentioned, he is definitely the best one to match him in the side lane here. But even then, is really going to be enough because as you can see already, Immortal Shield Build and Infinity Edge already coming out from Philly Barreto, as well as the healing reduction to reduce any of that regen coming out from Kevin Chen. And this Yone is just going to get stronger and stronger as the game progresses. They really need to find a way to stop him in his tracks right now, or find a way to cross-map trade an objective. See if they can maybe even just give up this dragon, go for the Baron, try and get an attempt there. See if they can just get anything done on that side of the map. As Drip Irrigation's gonna go in alone onto Depperpine. Already gets a good chunk of him down to half HP, but does get kicked away. Depperpine is gonna have to flash out. Immortal Shield Build popped as well as the rest of the team goes in. Drip Irrigation gets popped very early on, and look at the HP bars from the members of Collective Effort. They're already pretty low as the taunt comes in, and Gregorio is going to fall as Philly Barreto, looking with the face sealed onto 3 members, picks up a triple kill for himself. That's 4 members down for the side of Lost Chapter, and this should be the dragon for Collective Effort. They don't have a smite, but it shouldn't really matter as Philly Barreto is looking for more onto Shin Yuna. Doesn't have quite enough damage to finish him off before the gravity field would have stunned him anyways. But that is a huge tempo swing over to Collective Effort.
Not only is that going to be the dragon, but it's going to be the Baron as well, and Philly Barreto of all players will be the absolute... Oh, they're not going to go for the Baron, but Philly Barreto, he is the absolute MVP of this team fight for Collective Effort. He lies in wait. Drip Irrigation does end up going down as the first casualty of the team fight, but he waits for the perfect ultimate, and he's looking for more.
Yeah, there was only 10 seconds left in the Memory, so I don't imagine they'd be going for the Baron so early. Chaos Storm does get dropped down by Shin Yuna, and you can see Philly Barreto pinging that ultimate away, knowing that it was pretty much wasted there. So honestly, with that Chaos Storm down, they could try and look for a Baron attempt here if they want to, even though all 5 members are up. Either a Baron attempt, or they could try and look for a pick in that river, get control of the vision, and see if they can pick someone off as they walk up to try and get vision of that. Otherwise, again, they really could just go for this Baron if they want to. I think they're strong enough right now. They take it very quickly. So either going for the Baron or looking for a pick off of the vision control in the river, I'd imagine that's going to be their play if they really want to go for a game-ending play here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of flexibility still available for Collective Effort because Philly Barreto has this teleport available, so he's happy to sit down here in this side lane. We can see at this point he's 2 levels up over Kevin Chen on the Mundo, and then he's going to go in.
Oh, Philly Barreto getting a good chunk of damage onto Kevin Chen already, down to about half HP. Kevin Chen does have a lot of regen, though.
Yeah, and it is slow for this Yone to be able to take down something like a Mundo, but with with the Mortal Reminder completed for Philly, he doesn't have to worry too much about the healing while they're actually duking it out on the 1v1. So just this is just a really big advantage. This is the point where even, you can see the HP bar of Kevin Chen right now. This is the point where Philly Barreto is not able to be matched by anyone else, and you love to see it with this, which is that the MVP of the CCS is absolutely putting his team on his back. Yes, there are other members performing well from Collective Effort as well, but none to the level that Philly Barreto is showing us with this Yone. And now we do see that the gold lead has flipped over to Collective Effort. Very, very scary to see if you're Lost Chapter. And at this point, if you're Lost Chapter, it's going to be all about controlling the vision. Can you set up some kind of situation where you can get a pick to start the team fight? Specifically on Philly Barreto, would be nice, but anyone that they can get to start the team fight and get a 4v5 advantage will be, they're going to go ahead and take it. And that's why you can see these sweepers coming out, this pink ward in the brush, in the river for Shin Yuna and Gregorio. They're lying in wait for someone to show up, but there's not really any reason that Collective Effort needs to go in that direction. They know that Lost Chapter isn't taking down the Baron because they just don't have the speed to be able to do that yet. So Collective Effort just playing it very calm, cool, and collected at this point in the game.
Yeah, they're taking their time here. They're honestly just waiting for the next dragon. It doesn't seem like they're very interested in going for the Baron quite yet, so they really just want to wait and force Lost Chapter to make a choice, right? To either contest that dragon and potentially lose it again, as collective effort should be just extremely confident here. Filiberto trying to look to go on to Kevin Chen. No, isn't going to do so. Oh, Gregorio got the steal on that scuttle. I'm not sure if it's going to matter too much. I don't think they're going to fight here, but definitely a little bit of an advantage going back over to them, over to Lost Chapter. But overall, really, they just want to wait for the dragon. They want to force Lost Chapter to contest it and potentially lose the game off of it, or force them to try and go for something else. Maybe cross map, maybe go for the Baron instead. But either way, collective effort is going to be on the front foot.
Yeah, absolutely they are. And with something like the Scuttle steal like that, it's Gregorio just showing kind of the mechanical prowess that he is able to have. Now, I will say I'm a little bit disappointed. I mean, he certainly did make a couple of plays early in this game up towards that top lane alongside Kevin Chen, but I would have liked to see Gregorio pop off a little bit more on this signature Lee Sin pick, especially given that they did expend their first pick onto it. It really just hasn't shown that value for me. And as another turret is going to go down from Lost Chapter, the gold lead will continue to expand a little bit, actually stand pretty similar, and now Dragon up. It is just the third Dragon, so if you're Lost Chapter, I don't want to see them necessarily force a fight over this no matter what.
Yeah, and even if they force something, you already see me crit you now. Already pushing out the mid lane here. It doesn't need to be here because it does have the stand united. But the dragon's already down to half HP. There has to be a fight that starts here as the Shusha Barrage goes out. It gets a good chunk onto Gregorio. Chaos Storm being dropped as well is going to zone him out a little bit. But here's the Fate Seal with the stand united on top of the Yone. Goes in as the rest of the team. And the dragon does go over to Lost Chapter. But can they win the fight afterwards? Look at the huge shield coming out from Filiberto off that Immortal Shield Bow. And he's now taking out 3 members of the enemy team. Lost Chapter is only down to 1 member. Kevin Chen walking through the turrets. Looks like he might be able to recall here. He's going to be fine, but that's 4 members down for 40 seconds. And we already saw how quickly collective effort can end the game off of 1 clean fight. And we might see that here after this pause.
Yeah, it's going to be at least an inhibitor. It's pretty close, Naka. I mean, I think that they could potentially go for the end. I don't know that they necessarily want to risk it, but Philly B, he remains at full health at the end of that fight. The so much sustain coming out from the Yone, coming out from this Immortal Shield Bow, as well as the Death Stance has been picked up for the Yone at this point. So I just really don't see any way that there will be enough from Lost Chapter to be able to zero out this intense carry from collective effort. And I do also want to give a shout down to the bottom lane. Flan has been quietly doing quite well on this Ezreal. He's 4-0-7, so, you know, it feels bad when you're playing as Lost Chapter right now. You can't even think about the fact that Ezreal has yet to die in this game because you're so focused on trying to deal with this Yone who's just been an absolute terror throughout the entirety of this one. And I really love that Philly B, he saved this pick, he pulled it out when everything was on the line, and he has all but closed out this game for collective effort as we just wait on a little bit of a pause here because of the fact that Gregorio did disconnect. But you know, I just think things are looking very dire at this moment for Lost Chapter. And ultimately, you know, I talked about how I felt like the Lee Sin was a bit of a disappointment. I'm most disappointed by Shin Yuna in this game. They picked the victor. It seemed like it was maybe just more of a takeaway from Philly B rather than a point of strength for themselves. And if you're not able to pilot this champion to a high level, I would have preferred for Lost Chapter to just go back to something like Comfort, like a Rise. Sure, you might end up also losing lane, but it just seems like Shin Yuna has been on the back foot, just totally uncomfortable for the entirety of this game 4.
I would have loved to see the Graves here again. Honestly, bring back the Graves. Maybe put Kevin Chen on the Mordekaiser like before, right?
Yeah.
And that wasn't banned out this time around, so they could have gone for the Graves and Mordekaiser duo there. I think Graves is a lot better of a matchup into Yone. It's a lot harder for Yone to even duel Graves because he gets the armor, right? Because he's so strong in those close quarter combats. So, Yeah, I definitely would have preferred to see the Graves here. I think Victor hasn't really been one of Shin Yuna's strong points here, at least in this game in particular. But it is a pretty hard matchup for Victor into Yone. Yone very quickly can is able to deal with Victor's poke as early as level 3, level 4, as we saw earlier in this game, right? And with on top of that as well, Drip Irrigation did a really good job of getting Filiberto ahead early game. So it's not necessarily just in the mid 1v1. It was also a lot of jungle diff as well, I'd say there. But that being said, the game isn't over quite yet. We still do have 20 seconds left on Victor, 25 on Aphelios, and then Gregorio up in 30. So it's going to be a while before they come up, but as you said, doesn't really seem like they can end the game here quite yet, but we did see them end games in moments where I would have thought that they wouldn't have been able to end quite yet. So who knows, maybe they just have the resolve here to be able to close out this series right here. But we're not going to be able to find out until after this unfortunately long pause.
Yeah, and so I think, looking at the death timers, it is really, really close. Honestly, it's kind of a fortunate pause for collective effort to have a moment to kind of decide what you're going to do when you come out of this. If I was I think that the high percentage play for collective effort is to just quickly, they do have a minion wave, they could quickly take down the inhibitor turret as well as the inhibitor, and then just run back to try to pick up that Baron, and I think that would be a pretty safe play for them. Gregorio in particular does still have 30 seconds on his death timer, which I think would give them plenty of time. I don't think Gregorio would be able to get there then, but Flan does have the Divine Sunderer. You do have an additional AD champion in Filiberto to be able to hit these turrets, so they do have a lot of turret damage. So we'll just have to see which one they decide to go with, whether or not they just want to be done with it right now, they want to end it, or if they go for the high percentage play. Personally, I think the high percentage play makes more sense just because you're so far ahead, but not sure what they'll decide.
I think they have two options here. I think they either want to end right here, or they want to take out this mid inhibitor turret and then go for Baron. Because look at the bottom wave, right? There's a huge wave that's stacked coming in towards the turret here, and the fact that they're leaving it alone, even though 4 members are down, they could very easily just push this and get the inhibitor with 3 members, right? But the fact that they committed all 4 members to this, and no one's picking up the bot side, tells me that they're going for a game-ending play or going for the Baron, which again is also somewhat of a game-ending play, just not quite as quickly. So
yeah.
That's what I'm getting from this. I think that they're probably looking to really push this lead even further now.
Absolutely, and glad that we had so much time to analyze this really small amount of posturing from collective effort. Normally, we would not have that opportunity, as we still do just wait for Gregorio to reconnect into this game. But ultimately, looking back, if collective effort is able to take this game, it has been, overall a pretty close series. Yeah, I think the first 2 games in particular were extremely competitive, and we got a lot out of this series that we wanted, especially after a couple of really one-sided 3-0 wins. I felt like the biggest difference, or in the semifinals, I feel like the biggest difference in between the 2 teams here was really the drafting. I felt that collective effort were able to take the advantage in the draft every single time that they won substantially. And another thing that we talked about it a lot last game, but not as much this time. Cider Mill on this Soraka, certainly I don't think it's been necessarily quite as effective in game 4 as it was in game 3, but he's 0-2-12. He has been involved in a lot of this, has been able to be one of the reasons that Philly B has had so much sustain in these team fights. So really happy to see Cider Mill's performance in this game. It's been very impressive.
Yeah, Cider Mill definitely very good on the Soraka in particular. And I'm really surprised that Soraka didn't get banned out before this, seeing how effective it's been here in the series, right? And I really like that they're matching it with this hyper carry It's such a good combo. Putting the hyper carry with Soraka and Shen in particular together makes that hyper carry impossible to kill. And I thought it was gonna be in the bottom lane, maybe with like a Kai'Sa or a Vayne, right? But we're just seeing going onto the mid lane instead. And I really think that ends up being the better choice, as we've seen Filiberto being such a playmaker for this team, right? So I really like that they ended up finding a good hyper carry to match that Soraka with, even if it wasn't ending up in the bottom lane. And again, the fact that this wasn't foresought by Lost Chapter and banned out in any way really shows a little bit of a draft difference in this game here. As we finally go back into the game after the pause, we probably will see a little bit of a spectator delay pause after this. But overall, yeah, this is exactly what I was saying. They take the inhibitor turret, just the inhibitor turret, and then they go straight for the Baron. They're giving up on that huge bottom wave in favor of tempo on this Baron, as members are still yet to spawn for the side of Lost Chapter, and all 4 members here for the side of Collective Effort are going towards this Baron to get it down as quickly as possible before there's even a chance to answer. And I imagine after that, they're going to look for one last push to end the game.
Yeah, I think you're right, and obviously it'll be pretty easy for them to come back and grab that inhibitor with the Baron buff on. I'm sure that they have a lot of gold in their pockets after that fight in particular.
Billy B, though, to zone them out by killing them even. Yeah, with the laugh right in Filiberto's face, knowing that he couldn't kill.
Good to see the spirits are still high from Yoma for Lost Chapter, so, you know, still a little bit of energy left in them. But look at the amount of golds that's sitting in the pocket for Collective Effort. 1,200 from the Ezreal, 1,000 from the Yone, 1,200 for Drip Irrigation. So they have a lot of money that they're able to spend here, able to pick up some of these last items. You know, interestingly, one that catches my eye is Ezreal does complete his Frozen Heart, which means he's going to be just about completely unkillable. And as you said, Naka, I think that they're going to make one last push here. Looks like they're grouping into the bottom lane to try to take out some more turrets, probably take down an inhibitor, and crown themselves as the first ever champions of the Classic Championship Series. Filiberto, though, he's trying to just do it by himself. Not able to make anything happen, but the rest of the members do join him as well. Shen with that Baron buff into the top lane. So powerful because he has the Stand United in order to group.
Already underneath the turret, goes down, picks up the kill. And Shin Yuna falls immediately. That's one member down already. Filiberto is still on the run looking for more. Does not have Fate sealed anymore, so won't be able to make that play again. But with only 3 members to defend here, and Depripine not really able to clear this wave, not able to walk up and auto these minions at all. And with me, Crit You now pushing out the top lane as well. They have to make a decision now. They have to try and look to engage this 3v4 or just give it up. They're really just not doing anything by standing here. They're giving me Crit You now all the free time in the top lane to push as they take out the bottom inhibitor turret, as they take out the bottom inhibitor. And look at that, 3 super minions. Or sorry, cannon, buffed up cannon minions pushing out the bottom side. Flan might be a little bit too deep though. It's very low. Gets picked up by Shin Yuna off spawn. Drip Irrigation backing up a little bit. Filiberto looking for more though. And Drip Irrigation is following up as well. Here's the Stand United to defend him for a little bit longer, but is going to fall to Shin Yuna underneath the turret. And they might have bit off more than they can chew as me Crit You now is so low. Cider Mill is so low and they have to back off.
Yeah, and so Lost Chapter, they are able to keep their base alive, but it's going to be 3 inhibitors falling down for them, so they are just going to be spending basically all of their time in the base trying to defend themselves against this onslaught of minions, and Collective Effort able to, you know, they are able to just totally monopolized the vision for themselves as a result of that. And we thought the Baron was going to be the very end of this, but with 40 seconds remaining until the Infernal Soul here for Collective Effort, they might end up just waiting a little bit longer to pick that one up. At the very least, they might try to just force a fight around it. And again, it's just one more fight for Collective Effort, and they will be able to seal their fate as the CCS champions. Obviously not 100% guaranteed, but I would give it about 99% at this point, as 10 more seconds until this one's going to spawn, and it actually might be that Lost Chapter doesn't even leave their base for it, because there's just so much for them to deal with there, and they're just so outmatched in terms of the items at this point in the game.
Yeah, 3 inhibitors down. This cannot be contested. It is only up to Soul Point now for the side of Collective Effort. But of course, Lost Chapter would have wanted that Soul for themselves. And now it's up for grabs on either side in the next 5 minutes. But I don't know if the game's going to last that long, as they drop the Shurelias to try and run down bottom lane here with 2 super minions already pushed up. And all the waves, look at all these super minions crashing in on all 3 lanes here. This has to be the end of the game, or else Lost Chapter has to go for some hero defense here. Or maybe Flan gets a little bit over-aggressive again, but I'm not really sure it's going to be the case here, as all 5 members are stacked up, pushing into the Nexus turrets now. Drip Irrigation gets rooted up, gets stunned. Filiberto trying to look for some damage. Chaos Storm is going to get dropped down onto me, crit you now, but Yama's already fallen down to Flan. Kevin Chen already very low as well, and Filiberto looking for more. Is going to dive underneath the turret with the face seal on 2 members, and there's the taunt as well, as with the spectator glitch. Unfortunately, we won't see the end of that, but that is going to be the end of the game for Collective Effort after an amazing series, 3-1.
Yeah, and so unfortunate with that spectator issue at the very end, but that is going to be it. That is Collective Effort crowning themselves as the Season 0 champions for the Classic Championship Series. Absolutely awesome series to be able to watch. Although it was 4 games, there definitely were some incredibly close moments in many of these games. And now just taking a look at the damage charts at the end, Filiberto, he showed us that he is the deserving CCS MVP, absolutely smashing the rest of the members in this game in terms of damage with the most on this Yone pick. He led his team to victory all throughout the split, and he does the same thing in the final. And thank you so much for being here today with us. I am Elsa the Queen. I was joined today by Naka. I really appreciate you being here, just being able to fill in on providing that awesome play-by-play commentary. So, very glad that we were able to cast this one together, and that is the finale for our CCS split. So, just a very exciting split of League of Legends from week 1 all the way to the finals. But don't worry, we will see you next season. We will surely be back. See you next time, y'all.
See ya.